and more. We're going to dive into the news, though, here right now. And this headline is pretty simple. Star Wars Squadrons first reactions. This is not a review here necessarily of the game or of the story. Just Star Wars Squadrons came out Friday, Thursday, technically depending on where you were time zone wise. For me, it was 9 p.m. Thursday night. The game downloaded, and I had the counter going. I didn't intend to. I just brought it up and I was like, let me check. Oh, it's got like a cool countdown. I'm just going to leave this up on my screen. Joseph, I know you downloaded it a little bit later in the weekend for you. Did you have a ceremony when you downloaded?
Yeah, I poured a large glass of whiskey that could last me through the entire download of the game. Yeah, I'm still, going back to days where I would have to go from store to store to see if they physically had the game that I wanted and ask the Target employee to unlock the door sometimes to get the video game and all that. It is amazing that it can just be like, I had such a busy weekend that it wasn't until late on Sunday night. It was like 11:30. And I was like, this is amazing that I can just hit a button and a new Star Wars video game will download. And like, oh yeah, but I do have to wait a half hour.
Such a long half hour. We are going to read some reactions from some people we know in the space, but more importantly, read reactions from fans in our Discord server, which is you can access through our Patreon page. This game inciting a lot of passion, and I'm going to read some of them here, Joseph, and then we'll react to what people have to say. Our friend Alex and Molly over at Star Wars Explained, they've been having a lot of fun playing the game. No secret, Alex is he's a flyboy. He's a mustache-wearing flyboy. His stash squadron is going strong, and he wrote... he says, yes, I'm still obsessed with Star Wars Squadrons. The final game is fantastic, addictive, fun, and immersive. Playing with friends is everything you'd want it to be. Our pal, Hello Greedo, he said, this blasting an enemy starfighter head-on and flying through its smoldering metal guts while ripping through the other side of its fireball at full speed might be the most GD satisfying thing in a video game. Star Wars. There's that one. And then... Rule Cowley, who is a great cat, met him years ago in Jedi Alliance days, a big Star Wars fan. This is the kind of stuff he loves. And he says, I want to give a huge shout out to everyone who worked on Star Wars Squadrons. Thank you so much for all your hard work. This Rogue Squadron and X-Wing fan is very happy right now. Amazing. Hearts, hearts, hearts. So, and I know a lot of people want him to be Ezra Bridger. So there you go. The adult live action Ezra Bridger. Early thoughts there from what they're saying, Joseph. Blowing up a ship and going through its fireball, pretty satisfying, no?
Absolutely. I mean, that is, I think, one of the great things about video games. You want that balance between the challenge and just the power fantasy, the thrill. You get to be in the world you love, and it is so great to hear people, Hello Greedo in particular, there really expressing exactly that of like, I've seen it on the screen. Now I get to not just watch it, I get to be it. And that's really thrilling.
Yeah, I like that you said that. Just kind of something growing up. We all, get pulled in by that pew, pew, pew on some level and to kind of live that in a safe environment in your couch or your game chair. It's good. I'm going to read some of our listeners here. Some of our ForceCenter listeners have spoken up and spoken out about their love of this game. And I wanted to share their passion. Shinten Kensai says, my son loves it. I'm awful at it. I'm so awful. I've yet to even start story mode and instead play the training sims over and over. Still, it's pretty cool. Andrew McNotSoNabu Fighter writes, my first reactions are that I love the detail, passion, immersion, and being part of the boots on the ground, in the air story that isn't always front and center in movies and TV shows. I won't lie, I'm not great at it. My fingers don't always follow my brain's instruction, so it'll be a while before I venture online to get mauled by 8-year-olds the world over. But it's 2 thumbs up for me so far. At least that's what my brain is telling my fingers to do. Chris Alexander, a.k.a. Django's got a mango. As someone whose favorite part of Star Wars has always been the starfighters and their pilots, this game is special to me. Better, more complex controls than the old games, and a solid story to get immersed in. Plus, if the developer plays their cards right, this could be a great esport with a high skill ceiling, which actually is a A great point. I could see some, squadron teams being form up and playing at Madison Square Garden. We got some more on the way, but Joseph, I want to ask you there seems to be a theme emerging. This game could be a little difficult to master, and not everyone is mastering it.
Yeah, I think it sounds like to me the triumph of this game might be something that we talked about when it was announced and when its price point was announced, is that there is a power in specificity, right? There is a power in saying, it's not just going to be an add-on level to hey, here's like Battlefront is like it's hey, you can do all these different things. You can fight with a lightsaber. The story is mostly a first-person shooter and a third-person shooter, depending on what you set up. And then we also have ships. And it sounds like the power for people with Squadrons is not only is it just ships. I get to be a starfighter in Star Wars, but then also drilling down into you're in the cockpit, you're making those kind of choices that make you feel like you're really in that world. That it is not sort of a point and shoot with your ship, that you're really making those choices. And I think there's just that power in specificity, and that is rewarding the game makers and the players and their reactions.
Absolutely. We got more. Thomas Streeton says, my favorite with a U, so he's not from these parts. My favorite Star Wars game of all time is X-Wing Alliance. It took the great X-Wing sim format and added a moving story about betrayal and joining the rebellion. It was brilliant. So far, Squadrons is equally brilliant. Engaging story so far, not finished yet on Mission 8, with some interesting characters. Frisk and Von Reg are standouts for me. Really good voice work and design throughout, especially for them. Flying is immersive. There's that word again, Joseph. And fun. I hope to be playing this for some time to come. Now I'm off to do a little something I picked up from my pal Needles. Thank you, Thomas. Nick Hopper, a.k.a. Smitty the Werb, says, fun side story. Great lovable characters, real challenging but fun gameplay. One of the best times I've had squadding up with friends. Feels like a real spiritual successor to the X-Wing TIE games of old. If you get more games like this in Fallen Order, then we're in for a treat. Tim Van Newland says, experiencing this game in VR with great headphones is a must for any Star Wars fan. It is truly a fantastic immersive experience. When I'm playing the game, I feel I am really in one of the fighters. The story is a fun one. It feels very familiar. If you've read any of the Alphabet Squadrons books, I can see myself playing this game for a long time. Playability and replayability, Joseph, coming up in these comments here. That word immersion, not joking. It does make sense, good or bad. And you and I will give our thoughts a little bit. You're in that cockpit, and you feel as though you're in that cockpit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is really immersive when you accidentally run into something and the glass on your cockpit immediately cracks. In a great way. I am criticizing my own abilities as a pilot right now and complimenting the game design.
Yeah, a few more here. Utini writes, only a bit into the game, and I wish this was made when I was younger. I'm enjoying the campaign. I love that the game rewards skillful flying, but I can't spend that much amount of time on the game. If the game truly does reward skill in the multiplayer aspect, I can see this game having a lot of legs, which is only good for Star Wars. Greer writes, I grew up on Rogue Squadron on the Nintendo 64, so this game is right up my alley. The learning curve is pretty steep, but I'm having a lot of fun adapting to first person and swapping the power around. Put a pin in that one. We'll come back to that. The campaign didn't quite grab me as much as Battlefront 2 or Jedi Fallen Order, but I still really enjoyed my time with it. Some of the set pieces are designed very well. I'm not going to spoil, but I love the one in the Y-Wing mission. Oh, yeah, definitely put a pin in that one, too. Star Wars Squadrons writes Baron von Creepio, a.k.a. Scott Farmer. Star Wars Squadrons is a wonderful upgrade take on the dogfighting U.S. games of old. The ships are all uniquely balanced in terms of the roles and enjoyability. The campaign isn't as long or as deep as the old games, but it features a wonderful in-canon story with lots of cool new characters, as well as great cameos from fan favorites and lots of wonderful Star Wars lore nuggets sprinkled throughout. We're going to talk about the story a little bit here so far. Again, first reactions. And we have Mason Harris, a.k.a. the number one Captain Tarples fan, writes, I'm awful at it, which is probably indicative of how well it is made. Piloting a ship is hard, and the characters and the way it's tied up in the other post-Jedi storytelling is really neat, especially in the Easter eggs department. You can tell the creators, for the most part, know their stuff. For the most part, know their stuff there. Huh? Any thoughts there, Joseph, on what you're hearing in those comments?
Yeah, no, I'm curious to see. This is a really interesting balance in reactions. Of it sounds like people are at those different levels of skill, different levels of previous experience with games like this. With all of the shout outs to the X-wing and TIE fighter games, and it's really fascinating that even people who are like, I'm not great at this, or I don't fully have time for this, but I recognize what a triumph it is, and that's therefore good for Star Wars. It is great to hear the range of reactions, but all still staying really positive.
Yes, there's a lot of passion for this here. Last couple of reactions here, and then we'll give our own here. Our friend Alden Diaz over at Octo Radio says this is such a peculiar experience because I'm absolutely awful at the game thus far, but having a wonderful time. There's a unique double-edged sword at play here, where sometimes a movie and tech accuracy can even cause a lot of frustration, but can also make things beautifully cinematic. My favorite part of the game thus far is the story, because I'll always be a stories game's first guy. But I'm growing to love the multiplayer. P.S. U-wings with ion cannons are my preferred flavor. And Anthony, who calls himself a Poe Dameron wannabe, says my only reaction is that every night since the game has been released, and after we put our daughter to bed, I immediately turn to my wife and ask permission to jump in an X-wing and blow something up. So there you go. Now we're immersive. So going kind of transitioning into our reaction, Joseph, I'm right there with Alden that I'm not particularly good at this game, but every time I kind of walk away from it, which I can walk away from it kind of easier. Yeah, it's not one of the things where 6 hours later I'm like, oh, I'm still playing. After about 20, 25 minutes, I might start to be able to walk away from it. But once I do, I'm like, yeah, but I bet I could do that better.
Yes.
I know you and I are not as deep into the story as others. Again, this is our first reactions, but to the gameplay, you and I don't know. I got sick from first person. I don't know about you, but what your first time in the cockpit? What did you experience?
Yeah, I think it's a big adjustment for me because I didn't grow up playing any of the X-wing or TIE fighter. I was a big Rogue Squadron fan. That first game for the N64, and then Rogue Leader for GameCube. I was remembering that they actually put the game out like a week before the actual console. So like I remember having the physical disc for Rogue Leader and staring at it, knowing there's fun in there, but I can't get to it yet. So on one hand, I have a history with the flying games, but I've really been conditioned for the third person. Mm-hmm. So the first person is a big transition for me. So my experience of the gameplay right now, is really, I guess, the experience of the game is I am loving the characters. I love the way the kind of storytelling is designed. It almost feels like propaganda. Like you get these great, I'm not spoiling anything because it's right at the very beginning. You get great messages from Vader and from Leia that are really well delivered. And then it kind of transitions into this graphics that almost looks like posters that the Empire and the Rebellion might be producing. And then you meet the other characters. And every time the mission begins, I'm so pumped because yes, I want to kick ass for the reasons that have been laid out for me by the characters I love. I care about the mission, which I think is one of the best things a video game can do. That's what the story is for, I think, to make you want to destroy or to save. And then I get in the cockpit and I'm like, I'm spinning too much and I don't know where I am. I got shot and I thought I put the more power into my shields, but actually I put more power into my engine and I flew into some I'm not good at the game yet. I only got up to the second half of the first mission, started to give me more of the controls where I realized now I get turning a little bit more. Now I get deploying things to blow up the missiles. And I played for about 2.5 hours until about 2 a.m. last night as we're recording this. And it was just getting to that point of I'm just starting to get a handle on the controls enough to see how addictive it could be.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I keep making and have been making jokes about first person versus third person. It's not that I haven't played other first person games and been okay at them or anything. Like I'm thinking GoldenEye, for example, I managed that one back in the day. It's something about seeing, it just orientates me a little better. Whenever I have to fly for the New Republic, I'm good. I'm good to go. when I have to fly for the Imperials, I get sick to my stomach. That TIE fighter, and I think it's actually how well that TIE fighter is designed. I feel like I'm in a little bubble just looking down on the world. And I do find myself, even though I can control the spinning a little bit more, and that's one of the things it does kind of start coming along for sure. But you lose orientation really fast. There's one particular mission where, there's a Star Destroyer there. Like I keep having to go back to it and turn my ship just to orientate myself. Because I was starting to feel that a little tingle in my throat that was like, you're getting sick.
Yeah. And I think for people who are naturally adept at piloting or have played games like this before, I think they immediately unlock that power fantasy that Hello Greedo summed up so incredibly well. And I think for those of us who are on a learning curve, it is like, yeah, it's actually like being a pilot, because if you just got in a real life jet, you'd probably get sick too, right?
Yeah. Be more than one button to press.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and I like all that. I like the controls. And like any video game, you start getting better as you go along and you start to enjoy it. Fallen Order was that for me. Like, now I can climb walls and everything. Yeah, I totally know what you're feeling too, Joseph. You're like, oh, great. Now I can cut my engine power fast or whatever I need to do. But I wasn't struggling. I don't want anyone to think I had some negative thoughts. I just was like, all right, this is great. I'll come back to it. And then there was the one moment, and Greer mentioned it. I think we're talking about the same moment. It's a Y-Wing moment. For me as a Y-Wing fan, though, it was really organic. It was like, this is the moment I got to, flip on my side and drop some bombs. And I went, oh, that felt good. I like that. It was a little bit of that Star Wars fantasy. Indeed. Going back to 1983 and playing with my Kenner Y-Wing. So that's why I know the game has succeeded. It's pulling people in on those levels, and the story, good characters, really intertwined with Alphabet Squadron. And you and I, in our review of Alphabet Squadron, Joseph, the second book, you brought up the great point of like, how does it feel to be reading a book that setting up a bit of a video game or has something to do with a video game? I forget the exact way.
Yeah. Well, spoilers for Alphabet Squadron, the second book. So if you don't want to hear it, listeners, just fast forward 30 seconds, because I'll be quick about this. But yeah, there's that part in Alphabet Squadron where Hera, leaves to go help Vanguard Squadron, and then everything falls apart for Alphabet Squadron. So I know for me, when Hera shows up in this video game, like, I'm just gonna be thinking like, I'm so sorry Hera's helping me, but you in Alphabet Squadron, you're screwed. Sorry.
Yeah, especially good. Yeah, you're totally right. There's some thoughts of like, we're good here, Hera. You can go back.
I mean, great to see you, Hera, but Alphabet Squadron is falling apart right now.
Well, thank you.
One thing I wanted to be sure to say, two things that I really loved. I absolutely love Frisk. When we saw that there was going to be a Trandoshan, I was thrilled by that. I had no idea until this weekend when it dropped that a friend of the show, James Arnold Taylor, was voicing Frisk, and he does such a great job. And I love the character's backstory. So I'm just, I would be happy to crash into things for a long time just to spend time with Frisk.
Right.
I also really like the naming the characters right away. Sometimes that's not my favorite thing in a game when you have to do a ton of setup before you start of customizing your characters. But actually, I got really excited when I gave my Imperial and my Rebel, dumb names that I could enjoy. It really worked. I felt invested of like, I want to do a good job for these two people who I have named. So now they feel like they are mine.
Trust me, as someone who's created maybe over 300 baseball players from MLB The Show and treats them all like my children. I'm there with you on that one. Yes, the customization's a good thing. We're not quite sure at this point. We might do a story review a little bit later on. We're going to finish the story and see where our thoughts lie, but definitely some interesting stuff, interesting characters, full of references, and those references that kind of make you smile. Like, I know that thing. I've seen that thing and that other thing, and it's maybe mentioned here. And that is definitely kind of fun. So I want to thank everyone on our Discord page who shared their first reactions. I just loved seeing all the excitement for the game. And even some of our listeners who are like, it's not for me. They're enjoying that everyone else is enjoying it. And that is a good thing. Star Wars having positive vibes attached to anything that it puts out is a good thing. I think we would agree, Joseph.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, I want this to be successful. Even if I play through it and I never become the great master that some of the other people are at flying
Mhm.
in this kind of game, I want a cheaper price point, slightly shorter game in terms of the story mode campaign to be successful. So they are encouraged to make other games that are a very different play style or play in a different little pocket of Star Wars.
Yeah. Yeah. Agree. Agree. A question got put out there about what our Force Center squadron name would be if we formed up a Force Center squadron with us and the listeners. We got a couple great suggestions here. Squadron 3 is a good one there, but also Whiskey Squadron and Well Said Squadron. Again,
I like Well Said Squadron. I know I talk about Adventure Serial and Pulpy all the
mm,
time, so I think Pulpy Squadron would be accurate because I'm going to crash a lot and
yeah.
be a horrible actual pulp.
Yes. Oh boy. And my final thought on this earlier, I got to get better. The skill level I play at, I try to go like pilot. I always try to have a little bit of a challenge, but I don't want to have to break controllers, right? And it's been challenging as it should be, but I have switched to the story level. And there's been a couple times where I wish there was a little bit more difficulty to the story level, where I'm literally just camping outside of my target and just hovering and shooting it until it explodes. So that's on me to get my skill level better so I can enjoy more of a challenge. So we'll see there. That's our first reactions to Star Wars Squadrons. Thank you again for everyone who shared those. We'll move on here to Star Wars news. D23. This is the D23 Expo from Disney. That's usually every other year, roughly. They have moved it to 2022. Obviously, COVID-19 pandemic lockdown kind of reasons there. Understandable. It is going to be now September 9th through 11th, 2022 at the Anaheim Convention Center. And what's interesting about this, Joseph, is it puts it right after the rescheduled Star Wars celebration, which is supposed to be on August 18th to 2000, August 18th to the 21st on 2022. Now, there was a lot of talk about will this shutter celebrations? Will they have to move celebrations? This is possible, but it should be noted these events generally shared the same year before many times 2015, 2017, and 2019. It just was there was distance, a little more distance between them. So it's that close time frame that could be causing some to think celebration should move or could move or would move. So I'll start there, Joseph. What do you think about this idea of these big conventions being back to back and what that means for Star Wars and Star Wars news? Should they move?
Yeah, I don't think they need to move right now. I mean, I think we always, many times, the quote from Yoda gets brought up of always in motion is the future. And I think with what's going on in the real world, man, the future's really moving, you know?
Yeah.
This is not like a normal time because like these conventions are about what's coming next and about generating enthusiasm and excitement. And not only is there the, boy, we all hope that we can gather again as soon as possible, and certainly as far out as these conventions. But then there's also the what is there to announce, right? And I think that's probably what people are reacting to is there enough to announce? And I think so. I think Star Wars Celebration has the advantage of being about Star Wars, both in the past, celebrating anniversaries or near anniversaries, or even a Star Wars Celebration could have a theme some year and celebrate a particular aspect of Star Wars. There's so much that gives Star Wars Celebration value, and I think Star Wars in D23 is always going to be sort of how Star Wars fits into the larger Disney plan. Like we got that the last D23, we got that big Obi-Wan reveal, and we got that cool timeline that they put up, but all of that was in the context of D23 was really celebrating here's what's coming on Disney Plus, right? So it was really from that, here's how Star Wars works into the Disney master plan, right? So I feel like even though from an outside perspective, it's maybe like, oh, that's a lot of Star Wars news drops close together, I do feel like the kind of news that's going to be talked about is different.
Yeah, and then it's like when I'm listening to you say that in my head, I'll start here. My initial reaction was like, wow, that's really close. But then I'm thinking about it. I mean, look at the news cycle. we're in a 24-second news cycle. So
Right?
any big information released in August, they could release almost something similar with a tweak in September, and I'd be like, brand new information. So I think it's gonna be okay. And again, what you're saying, what they're revealing and how they're revealing it, and D23 is definitely, it's not a Star Wars convention. In fact, the first one I went to, I was like, there's a lot of Disney, Daphne duck pens. Daphne duck, yeah, Daphne duck. I didn't have my coffee this morning. It's a Disney convention. It's a Disney expo for sure. So I get the reactions, and but I think you're right. I think it's right. It's how they phrase it. What is the true value of celebration? What is the value of that? Because I think it's a great value, but what do you think it is?
I think it is. I think it has many values, and that is its value. I think it absolutely has a value of just community. Particularly the one that we went to, the last one we went to in Chicago, was just such a wonderful experience to just kind of remember that the internet isn't the world. In that when you're there in person with people, you see that celebration, you see that love, that the trailer for Rise of Skywalker dropped, and, there are plenty of fans who weren't sure about the title or weren't sure about Palpatine returning, but it just kept being a conversation. Like people just saying like, oh, I'm not sure. I'll be okay with it depending on how it works. Why do you think that? And it was a conversation between fans instead of yelling on the internet. Not that we can't have pleasant conversations on the internet, but I think we all know that sometimes it can tend toward the negative. So not just celebration, but actual discussion. So I think the community value of it, if you're physically there, is huge. Obviously the big panels with news of any new stuff coming out, trailer drops, that's all great. The other huge value I think it has that sometimes doesn't make itself clear immediately is smaller panels that end up being substantive interviews with creators and actors that kind of end up being the comment of record. And sometimes we don't even know it at the time. Like this past summer, the Star Wars show did that great compilation of significant interviews or discussions from celebrations past, and got some of this like really great stuff from Lucas and really great stuff from Filoni. And I think Star Wars Celebration does that not only with those big name creators, but actors as well, where you can look back and go like, oh, wow, we were at Celebration in 2022. We were all losing our mind about the trailer for Taika Waititi's film, right? And that's what we talk about now. But maybe there'll be this, interview with, who knows, maybe Oscar Isaac comes and there's a one-on-one with Oscar Isaac. And we look back a couple years later and go, wow, but he said some really fundamental things in that interview that we don't really reflect on until later. And I think that's one of the big values. It is partially creating the oral history of Star Wars through some of those panels that aren't as flashy when they're first, presented.
Right. Yeah, there aren't the big rallies. There's a lot of those big panels are really just rallies, and they're fun rallies that I'm so happy to have been a part of or experienced or seen the highlights of. But yeah, I like what you're saying. The quieter, intimate moments. 2017, a lot of memories in 2017. I've seen Mark Hamill do the tribute to Carrie Fisher on a smaller setting, big still, but just a smaller, more intimate setting with some real emotions. You're right. That was that was kind of the feeling of that year. Beyond just Last Jedi, we had just lost her and everything. So yeah, I like what you're saying there. That it's the big picture. It's not just the wonderful highlights. It's everything that's there.
Yeah, everything that gets archived and can grow in value.
So we'll keep you updated on this. I'm Anaheim Convention Center, man. They just redid it. It's they're ready just to stuff us all in there when we can, when it's responsible. So this makes some sense that they weird times, unprecedented times. That might include having two big conventions weeks apart.
Yeah,
that would be okay. Final story of the week, a bit of a sad one, but we always want to celebrate. The Empire of Dreams director and producer Kevin Burns passed away. He was 65. He directed and, like I said, produced the 2004 documentary Empire of Dreams, the story of the Star Wars trilogy. He also produced the 2007 documentary Star Wars, The Legacy Revealed. This one goes more into the connections to the big myths and ancient myths here on Earth and everything and how they factor and fuel Star Wars. But no doubt, Empire of Dreams is one of the more popular documentaries. Came out, like I said, 2004, attached to one of the DVD sets. You can stream it now on Disney Plus. I mean, this is one of the ones I don't shut up about. I sometimes put this one on just as much as any of the movies, just to get a feel for it. I really love it. But what is your experience with that documentary, Joseph? And what do you love about that, or any of these Star Wars documentaries that go into the myth that we love?
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear of Kevin Burns passing. 65 is really young. Very excited to learn about Star Wars: The Legacy Revealed. I didn't know about that, and that is so up my alley to have a documentary that is about the connections to real-world ancient myth and storytelling. So I'm going to seek that out and watch that, and partially because I love the material, but also because I so deeply love Empire of Dreams. I have visceral memories of watching it, because that set in 2004 was fascinating, because it was the at that point the even more special edition where there were more changes. So that was a fun discovery. And when you get those sets, you never know of like, oh, okay, you made a big new documentary. Great. Is it just going to be everything that has already been on StarWars.com repackaged? And I remember just being blown away in watching it multiple times. Watch it again recently on Disney Plus with my wife. And I think for me that documentary is about the making of Star Wars, but it is shockingly honest and shockingly critical of Lucas at different times. And for me, that big takeaway that, it's called Empire of Dreams, and Lucas either encouraged or allowed it to be shaped for Lucas to compare himself to Vader and double down on that with the title of the documentary, to say, I always wanted to be independent. And in order to be independent, I had to build this studio in this world that I feel a little trapped by. And in order to, defeat what I hated, I kind of had to become what I hate. And that's just like, wow, that is beyond like, how did you choose to make Bib Fortuna look like that? Like, it's so far beyond making of it, so far beyond. Did you know that the Gamorrean Guard actors got really hot in the desert? Like, it is so far beyond that into the emotional truth of Lucas. And this really interesting, fascinating to see that Lucas certainly imagined himself, I think, in the beginning as, he's the young man in Modesto looking at the single sun, dreaming of adventure. And here he gets to have it. And then he starts to see himself as Anakin and as Vader. And I always think of this documentary whenever we talk about the Vader no in Return of the Jedi that he recently added. That is one of his last changes, along with McClunky, before he signed it over to Disney. And just thinking about how fascinating it is that no, if Lucas in his mind cast himself as like, I accidentally kind of became Vader. I became this thing I didn't want to be in pursuit of what I did want to be, and how much did he add that? No, because that's how he feels of like, I'm reclaiming my control over myself and my identity, and I'm being a Jedi, and I'm letting go of Star Wars. But first I'm going to add, my character Vader saying no and doing the right thing.
Lucas is Vader. An interesting thought. Yeah. Good stuff there. Well said, Squadron, indeed, over this documentary. And it flows so nice. And you're right. It goes beyond, I think even by 2004, we just, behind the scenes knowledge for Star Wars fans is just commonplace. You grow up with it. It's like, being a fan of your favorite band, what they did in the record and the recording studio for that record, or, what they were wearing that concert. It's just, we all know those details and we celebrate those details. And so I think this one, when it showed up, it was like, okay, yeah, cool. Let's do this again. And then I just was blown away by the story it told and the struggles. And I love listening to Alan Ladd Jr. Number one, he's got a very quiet, calm, unintentional ASMR style voice.
He really does. Even when he's talking about conflict,
Yeah.
it is like corporate office ASMR. He's like, well, they made some bad decisions, and then I had to take the blame, and I was let go.
And I was like, oh, it's great. Yeah, it just was pulled in and it retold a story that I was familiar with. And it retold it in a way that I felt I learned something new. And so that comes from the director, Kevin Burns. And we thank him. We tip our cap to him and appreciate the work. And yeah, definitely check out Star Wars Legacy. Doesn't get talked about as much. It's not as sexy, right? As Alan Ladd Jr. getting fired or George, struggling with dialogue and Carrie Fisher there making comments about it. It's equally as good and deserves a second look. Maybe we'll do a ForceCenter in focus on the Legacy reveal. That I haven't seen it in a long time myself, so it'd be good. We love our Star Wars documentaries. We absolutely do. And Empire of Dreams is one of the ones that all other documentaries are compared to. So with good reason. Rest in peace, Kevin Burns. All right. We are done looking at Star Wars news. The second half of the show will take your questions. Before we do, we want to do our ForceCenter recommends an audiobook we think you should try out on us. Joseph, what do we have?
Well, since everybody's mind is in their cockpits, we are recommending Alphabet Squadron by Alexander Freed.
There you go. Get into the cockpit and fly, my friends. Download your free audiobook today at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audiobook. We'll take a quick break, reset. On the other side, your Star Wars questions. This is ForceCenter.